Sesaat lagi kita akan berbicara dengan Zarafa Giraffe, Public Event Organizer.
Hello everyone, welcome back to our seminar about how to run an event. My name is Claude, and today we have a very special guest, Zarafa Giraffe.
Hi everybody!
So Zarafa, hi, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
So before we start, why don't you just tell us a bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm a purple giraffe, maybe you could tell. I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area. I discovered the fandom about 11 years ago and got my fursuit about 9 years ago, and it's been a completely life-changing event. I love the fandom, I love the community, I love fursuiting, and I love fursuiting in public.
Oh wow, that's amazing. So I've heard that you run like some fur events in the area.
That's true, I do. I run several events. I've run with a partner these events where we get on little buses that look like cable cars and tour around the city. I've led walks down our waterfront, which is called the Embarcadero, and I've led fursuiting events to various street fairs and festivals. Like there's one called the How Weird Street Fair, and another one where we get together to watch the fireworks over the bay on New Year's Eve. So I lead all of those.
That sounds amazing. Could you tell us more about those events, like how big is it, and how often does it run usually?
So my events range in number of people from anywhere from 10 to 15 people all the way up to 70 or 80 people. So it can be quite a big range. I never really know how many people are going to be on an event till a couple of days before when I look in the chats that I make to see how many people say they're going.
Okay, I see. And how often does it usually run?
Oh, right. Well, it depends on the event. The walks along the Embarcadero normally happen about once or twice a year.
Okay.
The other street fairs they happen once a year as well.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm just curious. So when you, when you're planning to run this event, what are some of the things that you consider when you run this event?
Sure. The most important thing is I want to go to an event where there's lots of people, since the point of public fursuiting is to interact with people.
Right.
So I pick street fairs where there's lots of people, or walking along the waterfront where there's lots of tourists. I don't want it to be too crowded, because if it's wall-to-wall people, then it gets hard to move around in a fursuit.
Gotcha.
So lots of people, but not too many are my big criteria.
I see. And what inspires or motivates you to create these events?
That's actually a really good question. I do these events because they're fun for me.
Okay.
I like public fursuiting, and I basically pick things that I'm going to have fun with, and then I invite people to come along and join me.
Gotcha.
So it's important for me to have fun, but then I want everybody else to have fun too.
I see. Yeah, it's always great. So do you when you when you run this event, do you work individually or do you have a team with you?
Oh, I have a team. I have a set of handlers for every event.
Okay.
And I would not be able to run these events without the handlers. They're critically important. And I make sure to thank them and make sure everybody on the events thanks the handlers to make sure they know how much they're appreciated. I simply wouldn't be able to do these without people in the community helping us out.
I see. So could you tell us more about what is this handler and why are they important?
So the handlers' jobs are, and there's several of them, they're there primarily to make sure fursuiters stay safe. So make sure there's no puddles that we step in, that we don't trip over a piece of construction equipment, that we know where the curbs are. They're there also to fend off drunk people or people who might be pulling on our tails and harassing us. They're there to answer questions from the general public. They're there to provide water. They're there to notice if somebody's not doing well and gets overheated. They serve a lot of functions, all of which are really important.
Oh wow, that is a lot of responsibility.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when you like, how do you like select like these handlers?
Well, ideally, I want people who have had some experience doing this because they know a little more about what constitutes a hazard for a fursuiter. They know more about how to interact with more difficult members of the public. So I make sure I have some experienced suitors, but I welcome new handlers and make sure they are in a position where they can learn from the more experienced ones and at the same time not put anybody at risk.
I see. So how many like handlers do you like have in an event?
It varies, but for me, I would think a minimum of one handler per 10 people is ideal. I don't always get that, and sometimes there's more than that, but that would be ideal.
So like a 10-to-1, like
yes,
suitors to like handler.
10-to-1 ratio. Yep.
Got it. So since you have the handlers like helping you, but like when you during the event, like what are some of the responsibilities that you have when you run this event?
Well, I want to make sure that everybody stays safe, and I want to make sure we don't leave anybody behind. So I have two key handlers, one at the very back, who I call the caboose. And the caboose handler is probably the most important handler of all. They're the ones that make sure nobody gets lost or left behind.
I see.
And then I have a handler up front with me who serves as my eyes or ears, watching out for problems that the other handlers are telling us about. So a big problem for any of these events in the city is crossing a street. It can take a group of 60 furries 2 or 3 light changes to get everybody across the street. So I make sure there's a handler at the very back who yells out clear when all the furries in our group have crossed the street. And that's how I know we can keep moving.
I see. Yeah. So like you have like basically like a two like assistant kind of like helping you, like in the front and in the back of the car.
Yeah, I have one in the back, one in the front, and I have the handlers spread out in between, all of them helping with all of these tasks. So, I have basically a small team of handlers who are just essential. They are helping out the community because obviously everybody's doing this for free. Nobody's getting paid. They're just doing it because they enjoy watching the interactions between fursuiters and the public.
So, I'm also curious. So, basically, like, since like you run this event, like this big, like with a huge amount of people, and also like since like you walk like a long distance, like how do you like plan ahead? Like what do you have to pay attention to when you figuring this out?
Yeah, that's a lot of that too. I first of all have to figure out a place for everybody to meet.
Okay.
And usually that involves also a place for everybody to park.
Okay.
So I have a series of parking garages throughout the city that I know about that serve as good meeting places for our events. If I'm doing a new event in a new part of the city, I would have to scout out where to park.
I see.
And then for the route, I kind of look and see what would be the right length of time for fursuiters to go without getting too tired. Usually it's at most an hour of fursuiting in one direction, and then we turn around and come an hour back. Now an hour of fursuiting, notice I didn't say how distance that was. 1 hour might be half a mile of walking because we get stopped so often to take pictures.
I see.
So I kind of time it on the basis of how long I think it'll take us to walk there, and then turn everybody around before we get too many overtired furries.
I see. And then, like, do you like provide any like breaks or anything like that for this?
Yeah, I usually at a midpoint pick a place where we can take off our heads outside but in a place where it's not very obvious to the general public.
I see.
So like on the Embarcadero walk, I know there's a dock that has a big metal sculpture that we can go behind, and we can take our heads off and nobody out on the street will see us.
I see.
And I look for places like that.
So kind of like a place that's like not too like a bit more like conspicuous, I guess.
Right, you'd be amazed just walking down any city street. There's all sorts of alleys and construction items and things you can sort of get out of the way of much of the visibility and do what you need to do. Even at a street fair, sometimes like a store will have a recessed entrance that just goes back a couple feet, and I'll pull everybody into the recessed entrance where we can take off our heads. I use a spot, I've taken people fursuiting in Seattle, and there's a parking garage to an apartment building entrance, and I pulled us all into the parking garage entrance, and we take a break there and get water and take our heads off.
Gotcha. So, there's a lot of planning to do, right? Is there any like specific like things that you pay attention to like, specifically?
I don't know if there's anything specific other than making sure it's a place where there's going to be a lot of people, and that I have a place to park, and that the conditions will be good enough for fursuiters. I don't want to schedule too long of a walk or too short of a walk, because then if it's too long, people will be overtired. If it's too short, people will wonder, well, why is that the only thing we're doing?
I see. Yeah. And do you like wear your fursuit when you like run this event?
I do wear my fursuit. I wear my fursuit because I want the events to be fun for me too. And I wouldn't be having as much fun if I weren't wearing a fursuit. So I wear my fursuit at my events. Not everybody who runs events does, but it's important for me so I can continue to have fun.
I see. And so like how do you like multitask and keep track of everything whilst wearing fursuit, since we know that fursuit have limited vision and like that.
So what was the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, so basically like since you are wearing your fursuit while you also running this event.
Yeah.
Like how do you like keep track of everything?
Well, that's my handler's job.
I see.
I absolutely rely on the handlers. That's what the caboose does. The caboose tells me everybody's staying together. I would not be able to do that without the caboose telling me everybody has crossed the street.
Gotcha.
So I just simply couldn't do these events without the handler's help.
So it's basically just like teamwork and
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
That's amazing. So my next question would be like, how would you like determine like the location of your events? Like how do you decide we're gonna do this and this location on like all that stuff?
I basically pick a route that's going to have a lot of people but not too many people, and that has a point where we maybe can take a break and also has a reasonable point to turn around and come back before we get too tired. If I were to schedule a walk across a bridge, for example, that might be too long of a walk because it would take a whole mile to get across the bridge and then a whole mile back.
Right.
And 2 miles might be too much.
Yeah.
So I pick places where we can turn around easily.
I see. Do you like ask for permission when you choose the location?
I don't. I pick public places where you don't have to ask permission.
Okay, I think that's a really good point. It's like in public place you can basically
Yeah, I go out of my way to stay in public places for sure.
Right. But I mean, I'm sure there's like other specific place where you need permission, right?
Oh yes. For example, some of the big tourist attractions like Pier 39 requires permission, and also the ferry building. Well, they don't. They actually, the guards will come out and say you cannot come in, and I respect that. So we take pictures in front of the ferry building, but not in the ferry building.
I see. Okay. So, so basically you run this event with like a huge number of people.
Yeah.
Like, how do you promote and like how do you do basically let people know that this event is happening? Because this is like a public event, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. So like, how do you promote and
Well, I
do the
use
marketing for this event? Basically?
I use social media. I put it on my Twitter.
Okay.
I put it in the various Telegram chats in the city or the Bay Area. I usually have a dedicated Telegram chat for each event. And what else? There's a local email server that not a lot of people use, but I put it on there. And lastly, I use meetup.com. That's a social media app where you can organize events. And a lot of furries find out about these events by just staying subscribed to Meetup and get notified when I post something. So all those things together.
I see. So when you post this, like events on social media, right? So you just like, do you have any like specific like, let's say like people helping you with that, or just like market on your own?
I do most of the marketing myself because it's actually pretty simple. I put a few messages in a couple chats. I post on Meetup. If that takes me half an hour, that's a lot. And then on my own Twitter, it takes just a couple minutes.
Right.
And then there's also word of mouth.
Oh yeah, that's also important.
Oh yeah.
And so I believe like this event that you're running is happening like kind of like in repeating basis, right? It will like kind of like happen like either like once or twice a year, or like there's like gonna be events like happening every year and then, right?
Most of my fursuiting events are once or twice a year.
I see.
I do run a fur meet, which is non-fursuiting, and that's gonna happen once a month.
Okay. So my first question would be like, how do you maintain interest from the people to kind of like keep going to your next event?
Right. Well, one way I do that is not to schedule too many events. So for the fursuit walks, there's going to be at most 2 of those a year. For the street fairs, those usually only happen once a year, so that solves that. And an event once every 2 to 3 months is probably about as much as I want to do.
I see. I guess like when you have a like not that many event, it makes it like less of as a routine. It's more like something that's more special.
Exactly. I want it to be special and not be routine.
Gotcha. And my next question would be like, what are some of the difference between like running like a first event versus running when you say like you run a birthday permit, right? So yeah, that's like the non-person event. Like what's the difference?
Well, the events in public with fursuiting are harder because there's more logistics. Where do people park? Where do they take a break? How to keep everybody together with handlers.
Right.
The fur meet is relatively simple. It's one restaurant. It's not up to me to figure out where to get people to park. Some people take public transportation.
Right.
And we're all sitting in a restaurant, so there's much less logistics to deal with.
Okay, so which one do you think like is more challenging, kind of like running like those like the fair meet, or like the more like the walk?
Oh, the walks and public fursuiting is more challenging.
I see.
Again, because there's just less to deal with in a restaurant. Those are still valuable and important events. They're just and they're easier, so I like running them.
I see.
And again, I have fun too.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean it's good to have like a kind of like a balance between both, right? It's like I think more like where you interact with the public, and the one where you just kind of like interact amongst like other furries.
Yeah.
Okay. So also like since we are kind of like we just have like a pandemic going on, do you still like have this event during the pandemic?
I didn't do any events during the pandemic. The first event I did was in the summer of 2021. That was post-pandemic, and we were in a little window when all the restrictions ended, or most of them did, and we hadn't had the late in the year Omicron surges.
I see.
So that was the first fursuit walk since the pandemic occurred, and I've been doing more of those since then, and I usually require everybody to be vaccinated.
I see. So do you found any like different challenge from like let's say, hosting these events like pre-pandemic and like after pandemic?
No, I really haven't found that much difference other than that I still think conventions aren't as crowded as they were pre-pandemic.
Okay.
And I think that'll come back. It's just not there yet. I'm not saying they're empty. They're just not as crazy crowded as they used to be.
I see. Is it the same for like the events that you run?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Is there any like precaution you're taking on like different things that you're kind of like doing to kind of like adjust the different times between like before and after the pandemic?
I'm not sure I understood your question. What was it again?
Like maybe like you have like do you like do things differently before and after?
Oh, do I do things differently? Yeah, I require people to have to be vaccinated.
Okay.
That's pretty much all that we have left that I require. Yeah.
That's fair. Mm-hmm. And apart from that, apart from the pandemic, do you like what are some of the most like common like issues that you usually like encounter when you run these events?
What are some of the things I look forward to?
No, or what are the common issue that you encounter when you run these events?
Well, we have to watch out for drunk people who might pull on our tails or act too assertive around us.
Uh-huh.
There are things like things close or are under construction that I don't know about in advance.
I see.
There was one year I led a group of people to ride on San Francisco's famous cable cars, and we got to the end of the cable car line to get on the cable cars. We discovered that they were broken.
Oh no!
And they weren't taking passengers. So all I could do was offer to my group that they could see the cable cars going up and down the street, empty.
So, what do you do to resolve those issues?
Resolve issues?
Yeah.
You mean between the public or between people in the group?
Okay, so let's answer with the public first.
So, resolving issues with the public, that's what the handlers do.
I see.
If they see someone getting harassed, they gently guide the person away. They might answer the person's questions so the person isn't as insistent. They find a way to diffuse the situation and make the situation safer. It all comes back to the handlers.
Right. How about is there like conflicts amongst the people?
Among the people that are part of our event?
Yes.
That has happened, but rarely. Most furries get along really well. If someone's creating a lot of drama, I might not invite them back the next year, but that's pretty rare, to be honest.
I see.
Most of the furries in the Bay Area really act pretty mature, and I don't have to worry about that too much.
I see. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And how about have you run into trouble with a figure of authority, or maybe a venue manager or stuff like that, or even
you mean I ask them permission?
Yeah.
No, most of the time I don't ask permission, again, because we're in these public areas. I'm trying to think if I've ever done that. Most of the time I don't ask, I just do.
Maybe certainly a police or security thing.
Oh, that has happened. That's where the handlers come in. Okay. It's much better to have someone in normal street clothes talking to a police officer than someone dressed like a large purple giraffe. The person in street clothes is going to be taken more seriously by the officer than any of us in fursuit.
Right. And I guess that would be the more experienced handler than that.
Yes.
I see. Okay. So my next question for you would be so what do you think makes since you are experienced with all these events, what do you think makes a good event?
Are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. What was your question? I didn't hear it.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's start again.
Okay.
What is it?
I don't know. I didn't hear it. So just say it again.
Okay. Okay, so my next question for you would be like, since you already like run like all this like pursuing events
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So, what do you think makes a good event, especially with pursuits?
Sure. A good event is when everybody has fun
Mm-hmm.
and they do so safely.
Right.
So I don't want to make the event too long because that could get people too tired.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to have lots of fun interactions with the public.
Mm-hmm.
And in the city, there's so many beautiful viewpoints. Getting your picture taken with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background or the San Francisco Bay Bridge is a spectacular thing. So that's also fun for people. They get pictures of them in their suits that they can put on their social media.
Right.
So all those things together make for a fun event.
Mm-hmm. I see. And since in order for an event to run smoothly, you need a good like leadership, right?
Yes.
So what do you think like makes a good leader?
Well, that's a good question too. A good leader, for me, by my definition, keeps things organized so they run smoothly, but loose enough that people are relaxed and have fun. It's a happy medium. So you can go too far one direction and have something be a disorganized mess, and you can have too far the other direction and tell people when they're at one particular stop and having a blast, you have 1 minute to leave now, and that's no fun either.
Right.
So I try to keep it in the middle.
I see.
And my overarching requirement is that everybody should be having fun.
I see. So basically back to having fun.
Yep, that's the big reason. That's why I do these things.
Right.
Because you can never have too much fun.
So basically, let's say for someone who wants to run an event, is there any like specific, especially with pursuing events, is there any like specific things that you think people should take note of?
Yes, I think the first thing you should do, whatever it is you're thinking of, is walk the route yourself. Go to the event yourself. Look for places where you can take a break. Look for a nearby parking lot. Look for where you can walk. Explore all that first. And then maybe take a small group. Take 5 of your friends and try it out. And inevitably you'll come up with things that you suddenly realize, oh, we should have gone down that street rather than this street.
Right.
And then once you've got that down, then you open it up to a bigger group. I'm at the point now where I kind of know how things work, so I can kind of look at a site and kind of figure it out. But if you're new to this, and I get asked that a lot, test it out yourself first. First without a suit, then do it with a couple friends, and then open it up. And by then you'll know the area better.
I see. So yeah, I guess it's also important to kind of like understand the area and like be familiar with it. Right on. And then during your time running this event, what are some of the let's say the biggest challenge that you think you faced?
Oh, the biggest problem anybody has that does public fursuiting is drunk people. Drunk people either get stupid and pull on your ears or your tail, or they get aggressive and want to act all macho. And that's what the handlers do. They diffuse the situation. They steer us away. They keep a light touch toward the obnoxious person. And if we have to, we keep moving and get away. That's the single biggest challenge.
I see.
And luckily, it doesn't happen very often. Even on the New Year's event, where I thought there'd be a lot of drunk people, where the fireworks are is mostly families, and the families just love us.
It's awesome, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a nice atmosphere.
And since you say about handling and stuff like that, so do you have any things to say on how to be a good handler, or any tips basically?
That is a good question. A good handler is watching out in the area to see where there's hazards that a fursuiter might trip over. So if there's a big high curb or a puddle, a good handler will stand near that and guide people away from it.
I see.
A good handler also is answering questions from the public, and a good handler also knows how to steer a drunk person away from us. So those things all come with experience too.
Right. So also like I have another question, like relating to the like the monthly permit that you organize.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like have because like I don't know if like people kind of like sees like you or like the group of furries as like a furry, or do people just see it as like just like a gathering of people?
A lot of that depends on where we're doing this. In San Francisco, many people in the city know we're furries. And when they see us come in, I literally hear people going, "Oh, look, the furries are here." And they're happy to see us. That wasn't always the case. When I first started doing this 8 or 9 years ago, nobody knew what we were. So frequently, they know who we are. I'm not answering part of your question. What was the other part of it? Did I answer it?
Oh, like when you do like this big gathering, like with the permit, like the
Oh,
yeah.
Well, if it's a furmy, we're not in suit, so they can't really tell what we are, and they might think we're just slightly odd people who are wearing ears or tails.
I see.
So that doesn't matter so much. Frequently, people come up to us and say, "What are you doing?" And I like to answer them as the straight man, meaning I say very matter-of-factly, "We're out for a walk. What are you doing?" And I completely ignore the fact that there's 50 people dressed in large animal costumes out for the walk. And that really puzzles the people, but I'm having fun with it.
Right.
And they go, "Well, I'm out for a walk too." And I go, "See, it's a nice day, isn't it?" And then they go, "Well, no, I mean, why are you dressed up like this?" And then I go, "Oh, that." And then I sometimes play around with that. I'll say, "Are you from around here?" Meaning from San Francisco. And if they say yes, because San Francisco has a reputation for being kind of a crazy city.
Right.
If they say yes, then I go, "Then it's always like this." And then they laugh. And if they're tourists and they say, "No, I'm from the Midwest or back east," then I'll say, "Welcome to San Francisco. It's always like this." And either way, I have fun with it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and tourists and locals both love to see us. We get a lot of good responses. San Francisco is just an amazing city to do fursuiting in. I feel very fortunate to live here.
But also, I remember you also do like a fursuiting in Seattle.
That's right. I did an event in Seattle where I led people from a convention all the way down to Pike Place. And oh my gosh, that was a lot of fun. And I've also led, at Further Confusion, there was a giant light sculpture at the City Hall. And I spontaneously did an event the first night of the convention. That to this day was my biggest event. We had 90 people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we all went to see this big light sculpture, which was a lot of fun.
I see.
And it happened, like, the planning for that was like in an hour. That was pretty quick.
I see.
I think I walked that distance before I actually took everybody on it, though. So even then, I did a little bit of planning.
Gotcha. So, I mean, so it's good to, like, plan ahead and, like...
Yeah, I walked the distance
out
myself to make sure there weren't any major hazards, it wasn't too long, that we could get there and back. And so even for that short notice, I still walked it. I scouted it out in advance.
Right.
Yeah.
And how about when you run like the fur meet without a fursuit? Do you also like kind of like what are some of like the preparation that you do beforehand?
Well, before the pandemic, we had a restaurant for the Berkeley Fur Meet, which knew about us, and I didn't have to do anything. I would literally send out one tweet saying, "Berkeley Fur Meet in 5 days," and that would be it. For this new event, which we've had to put in a new restaurant because the old one went out of business with the pandemic, I spent multiple visits scouting out restaurants, again, scouting out the territory, to see what would work for us.
I see.
And we finally settled on this pizza restaurant that's open late enough and close enough to campus for it to work. So again, that took a lot of groundwork, just figuring out where to go. So I guess I do a lot of planning, so when the day actually happens, it looks easy.
I see. Yeah,
That's my goal.
That's a good point. You just
Yeah.
like have the heavy task behind the scenes and just so
Yeah,
everything just looks smoothly.
exactly. And when it goes smoothly, I have more fun.
Right.
So it works for me too.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
So like when you ask for this, especially in a restaurant, like how do you ask for permission?
That's a really good question. In the most current example, there's a group of Berkeley Firs at the university who actually asked permission to meet at the same restaurant.
I see.
And when they said that, I was like, oh, you actually asked? And they said, yeah, and they were fine with it. I would not have done it because it's the kind of restaurant where 30 or 40 people can meet and no one's going to raise an eyebrow. It's this, There are students coming there and classes all getting together and sports teams. So they're not going to care about 20 or 30 furries. Again, we're not in fursuit, so we're less disruptive. But I wouldn't have asked permission. But the other group did, and that's fine too.
Right. But I guess so when you went trying to like find a place to host such like large like gathering, I guess maybe like finding a place that are used to host like large group of people, I guess.
Well, it would depend. If I was having trouble finding a place, then I might have asked a restaurant that had a group room for meetings. Then I would ask permission. And there are some meets, for example, I actually was talking today about restarting this. The town of Petaluma, north of where I live, used to have a pizza fur meet. And they met in a meeting room in the restaurant. For them, I would have to ask permission.
I see.
So when I'm in a private property place and we're using up space, then I ask permission.
Could you tell us more about like what you tell them when you ask for permission? Like, what do you tell?
I just say there's a group of people that would like to get together for dinner. Can we do that? And is there a cost involved? And again, in the restaurants, I keep it so we're not wearing costumes.
I see.
I limit it to ears and tails, so it's less obtrusive.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's fair.
And I think there's a place for fursuiting. Obviously, I love the fursuiting events.
Right.
But there's a place for just social events without all the complications of fursuiting.
Yeah, makes sense.
So yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, do you like which one do you enjoy more? Like, the fursuit or the social events?
Oh, all of it.
All of it.
I love all of it. I love the public fursuiting, but the Berkeley meets would go on for hours, and there's always would be new people who we get to introduce around, and
that's amazing.
They'd come out of that event suddenly having 15 friends they didn't have before, and I loved being a part of that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah,
they're absolutely great.
Yeah, I guess again, the goal of this is to have fun.
It's to have fun and have a community.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
I can't go on enough about what a wonderful community I think the furry community is. It's great.
It absolutely is. And so I have one final question for you.
Sure.
So basically, just wondering, do you have any tips to anyone out there who might interested to run an event, be either like a social fur meet or like a fursuiting event?
Sure. First of all, it only takes one person. We were talking about that today. There was a first-time picnic in Sonoma County today. And we had 30 people show up.
Right.
And everybody was so happy to get together.
Right.
And all it took was one person saying, let's do a picnic. And then it happened. So you can start small. If you have an idea and you say there's no furry events in my neighborhood, start one. It's not that hard. Start with a couple people first. Get together at a restaurant, not in fursuit. Check it out. See if it's going to work. If you want to do something outdoors or public suiting, go by yourself first, not in suit. And then go with a couple friends in suit and see what happens. And work your way up to a full-fledged event.
I see.
It's not that hard if you start small. And you get used to learning how to do one of these events. I didn't know when I first started. I learned on the way. I did have an advantage is that I worked as a tour guide
Oh, wow.
before I ever did events for the fandom.
Gotcha.
So that was a natural fit.
I
But
see.
I think it's something anybody can
I
learn.
mean, no wonder you're so good at this.
Yeah, I did it for a job. So you start small, and just if there's nothing going on in your area, you can make the difference. It doesn't take a lot of work.
Totally.
Really, the smaller events just aren't that much work, and you don't have to have a big event.
Right.
You can limit your event to 10 people, and then whatever you make it so you still have fun.
Right.
If you're gonna get nervous or stressed at 20 people, make your event limited to 10, and then you're gonna have fun. Since you're the one creating the event, you're in charge and you get to do whatever you want the way you like it. So that's kind of nice too.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's all the time that we have for today.
Okay.
Thank you again so much, Zarafa.
Oh, you're so welcome, Claude. And I hope all of you out there use this information to go make your own events. The more, the better, because then we have more opportunities to get together. And you're doing everybody a service for your community too.
Totally. And basically, if you want to get to know Zarafa more, maybe you can follow his Twitter. What's your Twitter again?
My Twitter is Zarafa Giraffe, all one word. And you can also reach me on Telegram at Zarafa.
Awesome. Okay, thank you again.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Terima kasih sudah hadir para furi-furi cermelang kita. Sampai jumpa lagi kepada informatif berikutnya.